Hi everyone, welcome to weeklywed from Business School of AI. Weeklywed is our happy place to share, learn, explore. Weeklywed occurs every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I'm your host, Yashaswini Vishwanath, and you can call me Yash. I'm logging from Bangalore, and I would like to know where you're all coming from. Please type away your name and location in the chat. We would like to get to know you better. I'm an AI researcher who focuses on responsible AI. I'm also pursuing my master's in AI here in Bangalore. At Weekly Wed, we empower and enable the students to dive deeper into artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, and Internet of Things. Generally, we host speakers from varied backgrounds from all over the world. So today is a very special day as this is the week, just 1 week after the IoT Day event that we had. During the IoT Day event, we had 24 speakers in 24 hours. We had all women speakers talking about AI research and allied subjects. And we thought, how will it be if we call on each speaker week by week and dive deeper into what they have to teach us and uh, tell us about their experience, their journey, and the expertise with which they come here to Weekly Vet. Today, we have chosen Aishatu Guardabe as the IoT speaker that we want to highlight today. And we would like to share a video recording of Aishatu here. Before we move on to the video, hi Pat, hi Catherine, and hi Susanna, hi Sudha. Thanks everybody for joining week. So we will be having Aishatu's video that we recorded during IoT Day 2022. And I welcome you all to Weekly Vet and I will start that. So before I move to that, Sudha, would you like to tell anything about Aishatu from what you have known her for all these days?
So Aishatu is a peace technologist. She's one of my students from my Stanford class, my AI for product and business managers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sudha. And I'll be sharing my screen now. Just a second.
Can somebody test for me? I'm streaming live. I want to make sure if I mute my screen, whether the people are able to hear the stream, because it should come from the stream, not from me. I just want to make sure I'm muting now. Can somebody, yeah.
So shall I start that or shall I do it a bit later?
We can still hear you, Yash. So we have to go to the live to check.
Okay, let me just see that.
Yeah, see on the, it's noisy here, so I want to make sure that you don't get my background noise. See on the, not on YouTube or on LinkedIn, whether you're able to see the live. I added the LinkedIn stream. I can hear the live. Okay. Catherine, I'm going to mute and you can tell me whether you can still hear it. I'm muted. Yes, you have to talk.
Yes. So today we have Aishatu Guadabe and she has come for IoT Day event 2022, Women in AI Research. And she has shared her learnings about the very important topic of peace technology, where she talks about digital humanity. So the topic is digital humanity. And we have this good topic that we have with us, and we will be dwelling deeper into it. Aishatu will be giving us the nitty-gritties of it. And can we start with the video? Okay.
My presentation, AI and Art with you. My name is Aishatu, and I'm an AI artist, peace technologist, and I'm also critical AI ethicist. Peace is my compass, so my main goal is to promote global peace. I've dedicated my whole life towards promoting peace in the world. In particular, I worked in West Africa, in Benin, Niger, Burkina Faso, and also currently working on a peace process in the Middle East. You can find me on the list of top 100 women in AI ethics. And I've demonstrated my ability to develop AI solutions to promote peace. The topic of this year's IoT Day is research. So what really influences me a lot is digital humanities. And there it is really important to define what is meant by that. Digital humanities, for me, means participating in the world while being attentive to technologies and their implications for human beings. That's a definition that I can assign to. There's so many different definitions out there. That's why I shared this link with you here in my presentation, where whenever you refresh the page, it gives you another definition. My main focus is really to look at exponential technologies. And these exponential technologies are those that enable change at a rapidly accelerating nonlinear pace. For instance, 3D printing, advanced analytics, blockchain, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, IoT. They're all exponential technologies.
So I just want to ask Sudha and Susanna. So we saw digital humanities definition here. So is there something that you want to add on to what you think is digital humanities?
I'll let Susanna speak now that she's here. She's the expert on this topic. Thank you.
No, not really. But, I would say it's just digital humanities for me. I think I tried to give a very good, proper definition. But and also, if you go to the site, it will refresh every time and change the definition. But for me, to be simplistic about it, is that it's a combination of where humans interact, a platform or a place or any medium in which humans interact, and that is digital. And wherever there's human transaction going on, to me, that is digital humanities. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Susanna. And we go ahead with the Aishato session here.
My recent research has been really focusing on the different iterations of the web. Web 1 being a more read-only version of the web, like in the beginning of the 90s. Then you have Web 2, where we're at currently with social media, people being increasingly connected. And then we have Web 3, which includes the metaverse, virtual reality, increased complex algorithms, and smart machines. Also, I've been released from Web 2 to Web 3, and also into how the different apps that we know, like the browsers, where we store our information, how we use video and audio calls, how that has changed now into decentralized systems. As I mentioned earlier, peace is my compass. It guides me, it gives me purpose, it gives meaning to what I'm trying to develop. So I want to give you a few examples of my peace technology that I've been working on, in particular AI for conflict prediction, AI for social justice, AI for language preservation, and AI for edutainment. When it comes
So here we saw the four fields of these technologies that we're doing, and there was the specific thing about language preservation. I think as technologists, we really have the privilege where we can bring in our expertise and save languages that might go extinct. Like for instance, it could be any of the ancient languages that are out there, and we could preserve them by digitizing them. And I feel when we do this digitalization of languages, the chances that the language lives on for a greater period of time is there. So, Susanna, can you talk about language preservation from any of the activities that you have done there?
I haven't actually worked in that field, but I have worked in NLP, natural language processing, in terms of data collection for a major tech company. But my mom and I, we are busy looking into a project in which one of the older languages. I know when Ash said ancient, that itself, ancient sounds like it's a dinosaur, it's dead, it's already extinct. But whenever I hear that word ancient means it's the oldest living thing. It's not that we are trying to preserve an ancient or an old extinct model. By preserving a language that is currently, being used by a smaller group of people or by individuals who are not part of any Western societies or colonized, societies or, decolonized societies, when you bring that language into the mainstream, when you make it a part of, part of the daily negotiations and transactions that we make on digital humanities on platforms, it actually helps us as a nation, as a global, society to bring together different groups of people and make sure that they are all also not extinct, that their cultures, their, nuances are not extinct. So that's why we are trying to preserve ancient, quote unquote, languages. It's not like they are dead, they are alive, they are older. In the same way, Tamil is also a language that is ancient. It is as old as, I believe, even older than Greek. So it has been there forever, but it doesn't have the same, visibility as other languages. And there is still not yet a very good language model in voice assistance for Tamil. So what we were trying to do as like a pandemic project, in the pandemic, many people came up with many household projects. Me and my mom were trying to see if we can, there is an older text within Tamil called the Tirukkural, and we were trying to see if we could translate it as newbies, or as you can say, novices, people who are not language experts, but who speak the language, who grew up in the language, have an understanding of this language, but not as a literature, high level language experts. Because we saw some translations of this, ancient text that, had some discrepancies in that, in some kind of, discrepancy in how it was translated throughout time. And we were, having a discussion about it. And, one of my parents, my dad was a student of one of the original translators of that language. So he was very much offended that that person did the right job, they did it correctly, and you guys are arguing about it. And we were like, okay, let's do this the scientific way. Let's find out how we can translate this language now. Let's do it blindly, double blind. Let's do that translation like that, and then let's go back and then compare it to how it was translated throughout the time. And let's look at the translator's life and their belief systems, and the original author's life and their belief systems, and let's compare our current translation to that. So we thought we will do that as a project. All of these things, bring the humanities out to the forefront. It doesn't have to be your language. It doesn't have to be an ancient language. It can be any language. Even in communities that speak English, there are different translations for different slangs, different articulations for a particular set of words and particular set of vocabularies. We have to bring this to the AI NLP, because if we don't do it, the AI will just leave us all out of it. It will just propagate what is the most mainstream. As you all may know, there is something called DALL-E 2, which was released recently. And so if you go and, just, Google it, and you can, put other people have already, through OpenAI, have already started finding out the problems with DALL-E 2. It is doing the same things that other people have done, which is, they asked, it is basically you give a text and it will give a picture. So somebody put a text of lawyers and flight attendants, and it gave a picture. All the flight attendants were female and all the lawyers were male. And it's basically did propagate the same institutional and systemic biases that are, in the data. And it was just like a parrot, it was repeating that. And this is our problems. This is why we need to actually work with any language, any NLP. And Aisha too is a great example of that. She's if you listen to the other part of her video, you will see how she has worked within her own language, the Hausa language. She was talking about that. But I ask everyone who is listening to this, it's, if you look at DALL-E 2, it's not about any ancient or dying language or old language or a language that is so culturally important. You just even have to take even the most mainstream language, that is English, and see that it still has problems. So I implore everyone to come and work in this area, because NLP is one of the fastest growing areas, and language is one of the, Aisha to give actually a beautiful definition in this video of what language is and how much it means to our cultures. Just listen for that. I will just shut up now.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you for telling about DALL-E, and I've recently seen the photos of DALL-E that it has created. I think that is many people are talking about it, and they're not giving us the access to DALL-E. Actually, I try to get into it and try to generate my own artwork by giving my sentences and seeing how it works. And let us hear Aishatu's version of the natural language processing and the language preservation. And she has 3 to 4 piece technologies that she is talking about. Before that, I think Catherine had raised her hand. Catherine, do you have something to say?
Yes, thanks. I just have a question, actually. I think this language, this process of maintaining language is quite interesting, not only because like you can preserve the culture, but also you can make more accessible to reach these people, right? So let's say like a tribe that doesn't speak English, or in my case in Brazil, like Portuguese, but we have a way to communicate with them, so if we can make the system learning their language, we can find the easier way to communicate, right? But one thing that I was curious that is imagining like a tribe with a specific dialect, for example, and if we would try to train a model, a new AI model to understand that. So the way that we would to begin with, we would like to train the model, right? So I think we would have to capture a lot of this data, this language. So my curiosity is like how this process would work, like how we would like to create this to train this model from to begin with, based in a language that you don't know what means. So for me, I was curious about that, like how this process would work.
Okay. Sudha, would you like to answer like what the question that she's asking?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
No, as curious to know like how you would begin with like with data collecting in this case, because like we are talking about a language that maybe no one's know what means, just the tribe, and maybe the tribe doesn't speak another language. Maybe they only speak their own dialect. So how you would like train a data model based on that, So I was trying to.
Yeah.
You would have to.
So I want to add one thing, and Susanna, I just want to add one comment, and then I'll pass it on to you because you know this better than me.
No, it's okay.
One thing I have heard from Aisha too about this is she came to my class and said she's based out of Germany. She's German of Nigerian origin, and so her grandparents speak Hausa language. And Hausa language is the 7th most spoken language in the world. But in all the language translation from Google and other tech companies, Hausa is nowhere in that list. So she was saying, how do I get Hausa added? And she wanted to go build the NLP model. And the starting point was to collect the data. And so she's not done it, but she's kind of the journey to go collect data. So she found out that they did not have written text, which they can naturally give it to their data scientists to build the training data and the models. But there was, it was more like oral language that was passed around from people to people. So she tried to go find more and more of that. And that's how she started collecting. And then we found more people who are working on this. So the easiest thing is to get the people involved who are in it to be part of it in any form. Either the actual people from the tribe, in this case, Hausa is not a tribe, but the example you gave was it could be a tribe, or it could be somebody who's learning that language, who's curious and has brought it to the attention of the Western world. To actually go engage with those people and even capture recordings and stuff to get started. And there have been some experiments like that done by people. It is still so much better to hear from the original people who are speaking the language in context, in their culture, instead of somebody else making a translation and interpretation of what that language is from a Western lens or any other lens for that matter. Back to you, Susanna. Tell me what you're thinking about this.
Yeah, no, I mean, she raises a very good question because there are like some languages in which there is no one who speaks another language. So how will you translate? How will you bring that, in as a data collection researcher, you go back to traditional longitudinal observation studies, and, you go back to the, in the field, you actually mingle with the group. You pretty much, pitch a tent with them, or, you sit with them, you become one of them, and then you simply record. So if I can, show you like, this is a phone. In English, it's called a phone. In my language, it's called a kaipesi. So all I have to do is you would record me. I don't know English, let's assume. I would just keep on pointing to this object and say, kaipesi, kaipesi. And then you know that's whenever she's referring to this, she's referring to a phone or any object. That's how you actually build a model as a data collection researcher.
So I want to add one thing. With the Hausa language, Aisha too got me thinking about this. So I don't have the answer on that, but I was not thinking of language preservation, but getting the language translated with the authenticity of the original culture and how they are using it and how to get more people involved in that. So I recently found out that in Google Translate, which did not have the Hausa language 2 years back when Aishatu was in my class. Now they have 100 languages. And my guess is the way languages are being added today is by transfer learning. So the AI model learns from the first set of languages, and it says, okay, there is some common semantics and what is the structure of languages, and it is in the brain of the AI. And then they feed little data of the next language, not a lot of data. So it's not originally trained for the second language or the third language or the fourth language, but it does transfer learning from the previous language, which means whatever your foundation language you started with is what the AI knows. It's as if, like, if I learn English as my first language, and then if I come in to learn Spanish, then there's a whole gender concept, right? That everything in Spanish has a gender. And if I just know English, which has neutral gender for things, then it's a totally different way of thinking about it. Whereas if you start as, Spanish as your first language, and then you learn English or any other language, even Tamil, Susanna was talking about, has a neutral gender for things, then it's a very different way your brain is wired. And that's what the AI is going to go through. So at least today they're doing by transfer learning, which it speeds things up. But in that, there is a lot of quality that is lost. So I don't know how we will address that or what is being done to address that. I would like to learn from anybody who's watching this, if they want to be involved or if they are thinking about this, to connect with us, because I'm interested in research among my students to collaborate to bring more language models across the Western world and the global South. Okay, back to you guys.
Thank you, Sudha.
Thanks, Susanna.
And I will be resuming the share.
To AI for language preservation, I've been looking into natural language processing, also known as NLP, and I've been looking into how we can use it to develop solutions that can help us preserve languages. And I was inspired while I was working as part of the leading artificial intelligence lab participant. There was this guiding question called, how can artificial intelligence support us to better prepare for future transformational development? That was the guiding question. And there were so many different participants from all over the world trying to find case studies to answer that particular question. We had people from over 154 participants from 61 different countries and different age ranges. And it offered an opportunity and a platform for learning and co-creation to engage change makers from civil society, private and public sector in a multi-stakeholder dialogue process. So I have focused on the question, how can we use AI for conflict prediction? And in particular, what if we could predict violent conflict between nomadic cattle herders and sedentary farmers in sub-Saharan Africa before they arise and help stop them? That really interested me because I identified that conflict prevention is really key in making a difference in peace, justice, and in peace and justice. When we look at the Agenda 2030 and also the year 2030, there are predictions that say that over 70.8 million people will have fled their homes due to conflict and disaster. And over 74 million people currently are facing acute food insecurity. So you can only imagine by 2030 that this number will rise. So the goal really is to see how can we build peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. And that in order to do that, we need a commitment to prevent all forms of violence. So me being originally from Nigeria, and I wanted to look into how we could develop an Hausa NLP early warning conflict prevention system. And as I was part of the participants, I was looking into, how would we go about building such early warning tool? What would be necessary to develop something like this, and how it could be used to serve as a prioritization tool to determine hotspots for land conflicts and to direct targeted help to areas that need it the most. And as a peace technologist, what I want to do is really help build trust, collaboration, dialogue between government and civil society and communities. And so I decided that an early warning tool would be really appropriate for such an undertaking. Another tool I would like to share with you is AI for social justice. And here I was part in a hackathon, and me and my team, we developed an app against AI bias. This is another example of how hackathon can be a tool to develop really quickly ideas that can be used as real life applications. So we identified that in the US criminal justice system, there are algorithms in use that predict the likelihood of someone committing a crime in the future. So we thought, what would make the biggest difference? And that would be to work on the system, to develop something whereby judges would be presented with an algorithm that could show them the way a person should have been judged, and also look at information that shows that even those algorithms don't identify people by race, they use proxies. So as you might have noticed, language is a really important topic for me. So I like to quote Ngugi Thiong'o's Decolonizing the Mind, where he says, language carries culture, and culture carries, particularly through orature and literature, the entire body of values by which we come to perceive ourselves and our place in the world. And the reason why it is really important to use AI for language preservation is the fact that over 52 languages have died out already on the African continent. And at the moment, we have about 2,000 languages in 54 different countries. So to promote awareness around linguistic and cultural diversity is really important in order to promote AI-enabled machine translation for African languages. You probably ask yourself, why African MRP? Because it would enable the translation between and into African languages. It would also help to revitalize, maintain, and preserve languages that exist. And also, it would create a meeting ground for languages to meet as material entities through algorithms. So using NLP to bridge the language gap is just one example of how powerful AI can be in bringing humans and computers closer together. Now I'd like to talk about AI for edutainment. In my research and in my work, I've also looked into how I could develop chatbots. I participated in a course that was organized by Cocoa Hub, a platform that uses and offers no-code NLP chatbot solutions. So as you can see here, as part of the course, we were asked to develop a use case for a chatbot. And my use case was to develop a chatbot that could help teach young people in West Africa that are affected by the conflict between nomadic cattle herders and farmers, to teach them about the Fulani tribe, their culture. So as you can see here, I built my chatbot using the Cocoa Hub Studio, and I've written down the whole script. I came up with the identity of the chatbot, and I called my game Fulla. Fulla is a game that I really like. It's going to be available on Alexa soon. It's a serious game voice skill that I developed with the Cocoa Hub platform. And we had a bot of competition where I was one of the winners, so I was really excited. It's an immersive educational series game about the Fulani people. And it's very engaging, very interesting approach to experiment how we can use chatbots for education and how we can combine education and entertainment, which means edutainment, to reach more people. So what really guides my research is also post-colonial theory. And the field of post-colonial studies was influenced by Edward Said's path-breaking book, Orientalism. And it is something that focuses really on, what is knowledge? What is the relationship between knowledge and power? And here I would like to share this example because it shows often that what we develop, the inventions often favor their creators. So this is a very famous example of the soap dispenser that has been developed in a way that it doesn't actually recognize darker skin tones. So you see on the far left, that person was able to receive soap easily. In the middle, the person with the darker skin, it didn't work. And in the right-hand side, you can see the dark-skinned person using a white piece of paper, and it worked then for that person. So I focus my research really on, how can we build better AI systems that can serve all communities? And how can we design AI in a post-colonial world? And here, what I often refer to is we have to do a shift from egocentric to ecocentric. Because apart from just developing AI solutions that are good for all human beings in the world, we need to also do a paradigm shift towards an environmentally friendly approach to designing AI solutions. So a lot of my work, my research has been focused on demystifying AI, showing how we can use it to serve underrepresented communities, how we can use it to for justice, for peace. And here I was really looking more into how can we make this knowledge about AI or knowledge in general more accessible for the general public. So I focused on how we can use art as a medium to represent knowledge about the world, and to look into how artists can contribute to a collective search for truth. So here I would like to share with you one of my artworks. It's called African Epistemology. And it really inspired me to create this piece when I was thinking about what I mentioned before, the interconnectedness of humans with the non-human world. And also to show that when we talk about AI ethics, we need to ask ourselves the question, whose ethics are we actually talking about, right? And what would an AI ethics from an African perspective look like? And I'm very inspired by so many different African philosophies that exist out there. One that is well known now is the one about connecting AI with Ubuntu philosophy, the idea that we are all interconnected, that I am because we are, unlike the Cartesian cogito ergo sum, whereby I think, therefore I am. The focus is on existing because of being a thinking being, rather than focusing on how we exist in relation to the outside world and others. And yeah, I'm really, really inspired by African futurism, Afrofuturism, because when I was reading a lot of books, I realized, science fiction books and fantasy books, that there aren't many BIPOC communities represented as main protagonists, right? Basically, it made me start to think, you know, how can we imagine a future if even in science fiction books, they are not depicted, BIPOC communities are not depicted as being part of a futuristic utopia or dystopia. So when I discovered literature of African futurism, Afrofuturism, like N.K. Jameson's Fifth Season or An Unkindness of Ghosts, I started to discover that there's this whole new world trying to depict a future whereby BIPOC communities are creating a future that is alternative. So this is something that inspired me to create the exhibition, Quantum Visions of African Futurism. It's basically a 4-piece collection that I showcased during the Mozilla Festival 2022. As you can see, it was showcased in a VR gallery, and I will tell you more about it in a moment. Before I go into that, I wanted to talk about one of the art pieces. It's called Misclassified Bride. And this is a very good example of how I'm using my art as a medium to spark reflection. So if you look at this beautiful artwork, it's actually, the way I develop it, I use digital illustration techniques, and I use deep learning techniques to embellish my art. So my artworks are all created in collaboration with AI. And when I developed this piece, I wanted people to reflect on computer vision algorithms. And I asked people the question, you know, how would AI classify, perceive, recognize this woman? Would it recognize her as a bride? Would it see her, or would it misclassify her as solely being people, plural? As you know, there has been research into this showing that a bride coming from India or from an African continent wearing traditional attire would not actually be recognized because the AI was trained with white wedding dresses and would only recognize such as being clothes for brides. So whenever I create my artworks, I add a caption that is meant to be educational, which asks a question, and I try to use art as a medium to make these kind of topics much more accessible to people, because not everyone will be reading journal articles. Often these journal articles are more for the research community, but this kind of information needs to be made accessible to everyone.
So we had Aishato's session today, and when Aishato was talking about art, I just have a question for Susanna. So Susanna, you come from an artist background, and what do you have to say on the confluence of AI for art, art for AI and art?
Yeah, I mean, Aishwarya is one of a kind. She's one of a kind person. She's actually using. She's not just using. There are like certain art programs developed by AI engineers where you can actually input a picture, and then the AI will generate some kind of post-impressionistic or impressionistic or a neoclassical, whatever the artistic style or whatever artistic period it is, it will generate an image, and people tend to call that as art. I usually disagree with those kind of AI generated artwork, but then there are like people like Aishwarya and others who have actually taken art, taken as data from a certain group or certain individuals, and then inputted that data into an AI model and asked it to generate. And along with that, how they inputted it, they were the artists, working with a tool, just like an artist works with a brush or a canvas, and then they went into their co-created this artwork. I do believe in co-creation of artwork. You can use any tool. As far as I'm concerned, an AI is actually a brush or a canvas or in the paint medium that we use. In that way, it is a very effective tool for us to use. But then it's kind of a dangerous zone when we start giving more importance. Actually, if you are an artist, you will encounter this more and more. As soon as you paint a picture and post it online somewhere, the first thing people will ask is, what kind of paint did you use? What kind of canvas is that? What kind of brush is that? What kind of medium is that? And there is this, notion that, if you actually know what those mediums are, then you can actually create that. It's not in the same way as a photographer also. As soon as you post a photograph, people will ask, what is the camera you are using? Doesn't make any difference. If my mom makes a dish and I ask what are the ingredients under, it makes no difference to me. Even if she tells me what they are, I'm never going to be able to recreate the dish that she made. It's the same way for artists too. So I think we need to stop putting emphasis on the tools that we use, and we should not become tools of the tools. Henry David Thoreau said, that humans have become tools of their own tools. And we are coming to that point now when we start, saying that this is just AI generated art, and it is somehow more better than a human generated art. So let's not go there. Especially with DALL-E, we are already going there. DALL-E is generating all this amazing artwork. It's just inputting you give two words and two pictures. With a trained large neural network, it is able to generate an image that looks so beautiful, and we are now attributing more credit to it than we would attribute to a human being. I don't want to do that. I'm not for that kind of AI generated art. I am for artists to use that as a tool, and it is a great, wonderful tool. It's like whenever I go to an art store and I find a very nice brush, there are some synthetic brushes and there are some naturally made brushes. If I find one that is so useful to me, I'm so happy. In the same way, AI is a tool for me, and I am happy that it exists, and we need to give it only that kind of a credit.
Thank you, Susanna. And today we had a wonderful session with Aishato's teachings about peace and AI and art. So the next week we have Dr. Chitra Dorai, and we welcome all of you to join us. And we will be meeting at the same time at 9 a.m. Pacific time next Wednesday. Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.